Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Christina Worcester, and as you can see, we have a very special guest for this upcoming video. You may know her as Adam O'Neill from Youth Group or Addison/Hazel from Killer Competition. It's Isabelle. Now, this is an episode of Book Swap, which means that Isabelle and I will be swapping book recommendations. Here is the video that I sent her, sharing what book I am recommending for her. Hi, Isabelle. I am so excited for you to be my next guest on Book Swap. Because you enjoyed So This Is Ever After, the book I am recommending for you is Roll for Love by M.K. England. While it is not a fantasy, the main characters do play Dungeons & Dragons, so it does have an element of fantasy within it.
Hi Christina, this is Isabelle. I'm so excited to start your book, and I was really trying to be mindful when I was picking one for you. I was thinking, I know that you also like a good YA thriller. I was thinking of when we read None Shall Sleep in our book club, so I chose one of my favorites. It's called The Obsession by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I read it for the first time in college, and I was obsessed with it, pun intended. It's a really interesting book about a girl getting revenge on her stalker. I'm super excited for you to read it, and keep me updated.
I am about 14% done with The Obsession, and I do like that the author chose to make this a dual POV story. I think that works very well for the narrative that this author is trying to accomplish, but wow, Logan is a lot. And you know, you do feel bad for him a little bit, because he is obviously still reeling from the loss of Sophie, but at the same time, he is literally stalking Delilah. And I don't just mean casually internet stalking. He installs a camera in a tree by her house so that he can watch her. None of this is spoilers. This is all in the first 14% of the book. Obviously, there is something not quite right about Logan, but I'm a little suspicious of Delilah as well. I don't know if she's completely right in the head either. Obviously, I can't spoil whether I'm right or not, but watch this space.
Okay, so I am 15% through Roll for Love. I just finished chapter 5. Some initial thoughts I have are, I'm struggling a little bit. It's just like a little bit D&D heavy right now, in a way that I kind of feel like they're not explaining any of these things. So I'm already kind of lost. I actually am not super familiar with D&D, so I'm just struggling a little bit to keep up with different things. I guess I didn't even really realize there were different types of die. I thought you used a D20 for everything, so pardon my ignorance on that. And it's interesting. I think so far all that's happened is the main characters reunited. They used to be childhood friends. They met each other again. While one of the main characters is, getting through the loss of her grandpa, and she's moving back to this small town and, trying to grieve, while the other character is, already really intensely struggling with her bisexuality. That's also not my favorite plot point. It's not that it's not a real thing that happens or a real concern, but I just generally don't love when one character really wants to be an out couple and one character wants to be in the closet, or any kind of combination of those. I feel like it's just depressing and not super something I love. So it's sort of interesting, and obviously they haven't got together yet, but it feels very obvious, we all know where this is headed. It's also kind of interesting reading about high schoolers. I feel like some of the dialogue is kind of cringy. I feel like it's clear they're high schoolers, which isn't their fault, but as an adult, it can be a little bit harder to read and enjoy, because I'm like, okay, why are you talking like that? You're clearly 16. But I'm excited to see where it goes. The two main characters are about, I think I literally stopped right before their very first D&D session, which I'm also curious how much I'll be able to follow along with that and how much I'll actually understand what's happening. I think there's just a lot I don't know about D&D. I don't even really know what a paladin is. So maybe I need to Google stuff before I keep reading. But yeah, so far it's a little bit of a, I guess, a rougher start, but I don't hate it. I think it can turn around, but contemporary romance is always hit or miss with me.
All right, so I am 28% done with The Obsession, and all I can say without giving any spoilers is that things are really starting to heat up.
I am officially 50% into Roll for Love. I'm on chapter 13. It's getting a little bit better over time. I googled what a paladin is, and I'm slowly understanding D&D a little bit more. It's kind of confusing because they have these teenagers and their friends, and it's the two main characters very clearly falling in love with each other, and then their little friend group who has their own side plots going on. And then we also have occasional chapters that are from the POV of, I guess, like the dungeon master, like as if the D&D play session was like real, which is honestly kind of confusing. Again, since I've never played D&D, I'm like, how much of this is like dialogue that they're improvising? How much of this is like predetermined plot? It's not always super clear. And then it's confusing because you have the real like friend group of teenagers, and then you have their characters who are having their own plot lines and their own relationships. And so it's like very hard to keep track of, but it's fun. It's very silly. The little romance is cute as it's budding. I think my only other comment would just be, as someone who's very far out from when I was applying to colleges and when I was a high school student, I feel like it's crazy to like go back and relive all the anxiety around applying to colleges, or there's a lot of talk about not going to college, but just like that stress around finishing high school is like a big part of it in a way that like I don't want to relive that, but it's okay.
All right, I am 42% done with The Obsession currently. And the problem with this book is it's very hard to talk about it without giving any spoilers. But I will say, Logan has found something very interesting in his footage of Delilah and is now taking more risks, like being around her in person. The hard part for me about this story is that Logan is actually very bad at being a stalker. He almost lets his hand slip so many times. And he almost doesn't feel like a realistic POV of how a stalker would feel, more like how a non-stalker thinks that a stalker would feel.
I am officially 80% into Roll for Love. Right now there's a lot of conflict happening. I feel like everything's coming to its head. There are a bunch of small conflicts as opposed to any one huge conflict, which means I'm sort of interested to see how it's all going to wrap up. The main couple is fighting a lot right now, and all the different characters are having a lot of individual struggles, a lot of like issues with their family. Again, like it's very rooted in them being 17. Like that's like so central to the plot. So much college stuff. My only complaint is there was like a little rant that was feeling very anti-education system, which is such a nuanced topic that like I didn't necessarily love how it was approached because it felt very school doesn't teach you anything that matters, which is just not a train of argument that I love to go down because it feels very unhelpful. Like, I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's not that valid points weren't made, but I didn't love that specific rant from one of the main characters. other than that, I'm not super following the D&D plot, because we're only getting fractions of it. It's just hard to keep up with, but I'm assuming I'll be able to follow along at the end, hopefully. And yeah, other than that, I'm interested to see how they wrap up all of this different conflict, and a lot of conflict around college in particular.
So Isabelle has finished Roll for Love a full 3 days before we had to be done with our books. So that means I really need to get working on the obsession. But in the meantime, please enjoy Isabelle's update on her final thoughts on Roll for Love.
I have officially finished Roll for Love. I think my overall thoughts would be, I would probably give it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was relatively cute, relatively fun. It tackled a lot of issues around queerness with varying levels of success, I thought, just because they were trying to cover such a wide array of topics, while also grounding it very specifically in that sort of rural queer experience. But it also probably just wasn't quite for me. I think it was a little too YA, a little too college heavy, a little too emotionally immature. And again, like, that's the point, so I can't really fault it for that, other than saying that that's not something I particularly enjoy reading about. Yeah, and it was interesting to see. I think all of the characters were very flawed. Like, they all made a lot of emotional mistakes. They handled things kind of poorly at times. But obviously the main couple, I don't think this is a spoiler, they get together at the end, which is cute. We have like a side couple, we have, other little relationships. Some interesting things that are like hinted at or touched on, but like not at all expanded on. Like the two main characters, their moms used to be friends and then they got into a huge fight or something, and then we're not friends and now once again are friends. And that's kind of weird because I'm like, why was that mentioned at all? Why was that part of it? It was such a throwaway line that I'm like, did I miss something where that came up? But other than that, it was very cute. I think, again, the D&D scenes weren't handled super well, in my opinion, as someone who is not familiar with D&D. So maybe the audience for this just is people who play D&D, and so it's my own fault for not having that background. But it was just hard to follow, probably purposely so. I could not tell you the plot of the D&D scenes, though. Like, I could not recap that for you because I simply did not ever really truly understand it. And it was a lot of, like, jump cuts and a lot of just, trying to portray it, like, as you're getting, like, every third session or whatever, so you're just missing so much. And I think something else that was interesting that I did not clock at all until I was reading a review from Christina's sister, Madeline, on Goodreads, is that the front cover characters are like the opposite of who I expected them to be. This whole time I have believed that Harper was the character on the left, and the other character is the one on the right, who I literally, Ollie, I couldn't find her name. So I believed that this is Harper, and then the other one is Ollie. And apparently that's not true. So that's honestly crazy to me. And I will continue believing what I want to believe, because it's never going to come up again. But that's crazy. I'm glad that was pointed out, because I would not have clocked that at all. So yeah, again, overall, I thought it was a decent book, just not really my style, not really the kind of, just not handling topics super well for someone who's not familiar with them. Just trying to cover a lot of different stuff in a short amount of time. Even, like, occasionally covering, like, a relatively heavy topic, like Ollie's mom talking about, like, I'll accept you for your queerness, but, like, never commit suicide. And, like, that's, like, beautiful, I guess, a beautiful sentiment. But I'm like, for, like, otherwise very lighthearted book, that's kind of crazy to throw in there. But, yeah, I don't know. It was still interesting, and overall happy enough with it. So, Thank you for recommending it, Christina. I'm glad that I gave it a try.
So I finished The Obsession. I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was fast-paced and it kept me on my toes. It surprised me a few times. And I really liked the dynamic between Delilah and Logan as we got into like the second half of the book. Which is not to say that they are like a good romantic pair for each other. I just thought that the dynamic was interesting. It was like a game of cat and mouse, actually. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You're the best!